Hola community, welcome to another episode of Blender.Today Live. This weekly live stream gathering where we see what's new in Blender. And you know what's new in Blender? The entire Blender is new, or pretty much. This episode was supposed to last hours. There's new news everywhere. There is a Blender video sequence editor that since last week is going to change how you use the sequencer, how you manipulate images, how you see your strips. Then there is a new faster cycles. If you haven't heard about it, you probably have if you watch this. Then what geometry nodes, there's dozens of nodes new that or even changes to previous nodes. It's just crazy. User interface, keymap changes, improvements, new user preferences for the keymaps, the libraries, asset browser performance improvements, file browser performance improvements. What else? Add-ons, rigging, modeling tools. There's that whole summer of code project that was merged into Blender. I just can't fit it all in one episode. So I think I'm gonna have a second part of this episode. I'm gonna save a part that today I was supposed to stream from the studio. As you can see, I'm not there. I had some technical issues last minute. So I'm gonna save the interesting part. Well, I think I'm gonna say pretty much everything regarding geometry nodes and leave it for the when I can do it from the studio with Dalai, because it's gonna be best to explain everything else. And you know what? I'm gonna remove a whole chunk of, postpone a few whole chunk of updates, but I still have a amazing list of things to see. So let's get to it. I hope you don't mind. Audio is correct. Please confirm. I think somebody says that the audio is low. I haven't touched anything, so it should be fine. Please do not. It's cutting out. Is it cutting out? Audio is correct. Please do not start with that. I'm gonna jump out of the window here, and it's pretty tall. Okay, let me continue. Let's you have no idea how long I spent trying to making this thing work, but you know what else? Blender is working. So thank you for all your hands up. Thank you for let me know that everything is okay. It's a bit nerve-wracking to do live streams, even though I've done it for 171 times in English and another almost 200 times in Spanish. You know what else? It's great that we are live, so you can leave your questions in Blender.Today, the community thread here by Sansuls. Thank you, Sansuls. And let's get to, well, what's new in Blender. Let's start with a boom. This should have been a whole episode by itself, but the Cycles X project is here. Remember in April when Blender.Today had two special guests, Brahman Lommel and Sergey Sharevin, where they talked about the 10th anniversary of Cycles and unveiled the project Cycles X, which it's known for being faster. It's completely right, and it's making things like up to, it's some cases it's twice as fast, some cases 7 times as fast. It really depends on the scene, but it's really fast. It's focused on speed and also feedback in the viewport, so that should be incredibly fast. It's gonna breathe new life into your CPUs. That's one comment that was when we announced the Cycles X was in master. That was one of the comments. I was pretty happy to hear that. It's like, hey, you're breathing new life in the in my old graphics card, which is good for the environment, good for everyone, good for your pockets. So I snapped this picture of them the day the Cycles X was revealed, and it's so nice. Brecht and Sergey, they're at the studio at the moment, like a few minutes after Cycles X was announced, and people super happy. This is just amazing. So what else can you expect from Cycles X? Well, the community has been covering it pretty well. Like, there's all the channels that you already know and love. Southern Shot is even there. Gleb is there. Everybody has been making videos about Cycles X. So RIP Cycles 1 month ago. Well, branches. You know, Cycles X is here to stay. It's just a project that rewrote the entire cycles basically, but it's still a project. So cycles is still cycles. It's just same as always. There is some compatibility breakage in regards to previous versions. So make sure that you're only using your renders from now on with cycle 6. Don't go back. Also, if you're working with 3.0, it's not really recommended to open 2.93 files with those that you save with 3.0. Just saying. Work forward. 3.0 is a big change, but if you want to see the entire list of things that have changed for cycles in particular, in terms of drivers, you need to update some drivers. In terms of the features, the denoising is much better. Some of these changes have made it into like the library itself has been updated before even Cycles X was out, but there is just so many new features. One of my favorites is that you can limit the time that a frame is gonna take. So you can go to bed and say, okay, I have 8 hours of sleep and I have 8 frames that I want to render, but I don't know how long it's gonna take. Well, you can limit it. Maybe it's gonna take 2 hours, but you can limit, okay, no more than 1 hour because I want 8 frames when I wake up. This way, you just limit it and it will stop when the time is reached, which is awesome for render farms. You know, if you're paying for a few hours of render farm time, you can do the math and tell, okay, this animation should be ready no matter how many samples. I don't care about samples, I just want to use the entire time that the farm is giving me. So super neat. The user interface is also much more clear. Let me open Blender here. I couldn't compile Blender today. I just, yeah, I have issues in all platforms. I think it's just me that have issues on platforms. On Linux, I have issues with audio. On Windows, I don't know how to compile fast. It just takes forever compared to Linux, but I think it's also just the platform. But yeah, let's flip into the evil side. And cycles, you're gonna find that the sampling panel is much simpler. Viewport and render, like denoising used to be split into its own sub panel. Now it's per for the viewport and for rendering. So you can specify a maximum number of samples, denoising again for the viewport, and rendering as well. The time limit you can specify in seconds. Super neat. There is also advanced features, new patterns, but by default it should be fine, should be much faster. There is this lovely feature that you want to enable for sure. It's called persistent data. It's gonna store the when you press F12 and it starts to compute stuff and then starts rendering, well, that time before the first pixel appears in screen, that time, that data can be stored and keep on for future renders. So if you're rendering an animation and the geometry doesn't change much, so for example, if you're rendering an architectural visualization or an environment that is not moving unless you have a living field, it should that geometry can be stored in memory and it's going to be much faster. So the first frame is going to calculate all the geometry and the next frames fast. So make sure you have this enabled. I don't know why it's disabled. There must be, well, it uses more memory, yes. Some of the settings, like for example, there's no more tiled rendering anymore. There's no more tiles, auto tiles by now. You can specify the tile size, but by default it's super large. Blender takes care of it. Cycles takes care of it. You can reduce that if you want to. Maybe if you don't have enough memory and you want to save some memory, or maybe you are in a render farm that only has 8 gigs, 16 gigs, and your render takes too much. You can lower it, but I will leave it like that. I don't know about persistent data. Maybe it also has to do with memory and try to be the most optimal settings for everybody. But yeah, make sure you read the release notes on the wiki because it's usually pretty complete. Also, the noiser, tiles and memory usage, shadow catcher, that we need pictures. People, community, please contribute pictures, because the shadow catcher has been rewritten for Cycles X, and now it's much smarter. It doesn't only take, it takes like bouncing lights and takes reflections, takes, it's how many people were asking the shadow catcher to be in the past. Now indirect light, environment light, separate shadow catcher render pass with the colors instead of just an alpha channel. So you can mix it with real footage and it's gonna look much better. It's also super nice. Shadow terminator. This was also added in the past, but again, before Cycles X, I believe, and it should get rid of, you know, that line that you find between the light and the shadow. It should get rid of that. If you know this guy, these little pointy shadows, they should be history with this new setting. I think there's been like 3 commits over the last few years tackling this issue, but now I think should be for real fixed. Shadow terminator, it's not gonna be back. Light option for visible camera rays. Yes, actually now in render you can tell a lamp if you want to have it evil twin. If you want to have the light visible in the camera, you just turn it on, turn the visibility on for that object, and it's shown. The same with other camera types. So if you have an area, a massive area, the area is now visible. You don't have to fake it with something. You can make it visible. I think I'm losing some frame rates here. I'm asking too much of my graphics card. Maybe I'm not even using my graphics. That's why I'm not using my. Oh no, loading render kernels. That's another feature of Cycles X, that the loading render kernels message is super fast. It doesn't take minutes as it used to. So that's another great update, and I'm gonna make sure I have upticks. Yep. Okay. Baking support for denoising, better subsurface scattering, volume sampling is also quality is now the same for CPU and GPU, which is great again for render farms, because render farms, the more affordable ones, are usually CPU, and you don't want to. Maybe at home you're rendering some frames in GPU, so you want them to match. Again, super welcome. Position render. This, I remember working at a studio where I was working on Blender, of course, Cycles, and they were doing the compositing in Nuke. And yeah, they asked me for, hey, can I have a position pass? And I was like, well, we don't have that, but wait, there is a thread on Blender Artist of a guy that made a that explains how to do it with the position, shader, material override. Not anymore. Position render is here to stay. So super happy. Light clamping, you should check out here all the cool stuff that Cycles X brings. One of the things, the most remarkable that was removed, is branch path tracing, but with adaptive sampling and overall improvements in speed, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay, time to take a break from Cycles and invite, well, not to put it aside, and also invite Eevee to the party, because the next feature is for both Eevee and Cycles. There's a new setting in the hair info node for hairy people. No, that sounds wrong. For people that like to make hair, fur, grass, why not? So the next feature is called hair info length attribute. So it's just a new output, sorry, of the hair info node that brings you this. Basically, it's just the length option. So you can this is the setting, and for example, is giving you the half. If I flip, for example, here greater than 0 is gonna. At 0.5, it gives you half the length of the hair. It's not here though. I think this is Eevee. Yeah, this is Evil. This is Cycle's CPU, and this is Cycle's in GPU. Artists, please provide some cool renders. And hairy people. I didn't mean that. But yeah, hair length. What can you do with the length? Well, you can map a texture to it. So you have a nice fading, for example, for fur. It's pretty neat. So thank you, Lasse Foster, for working on it. And thank you, Clément Foucault, Brecht, and Jeroen, I think, committed this change. So yeah, collective work. That is all for cycles. Let's switch topics into the video sequence editor. Video sequence editor. Okay, you may want to sit down for this. If you are a video sequence editor user, just no, maybe not all your dreams, but most of your dreams have been made true since last week. I don't know how many attempts there were to introduce the features that I'm gonna talk about now, but it's just crazy. So let's get to it. So first of all, the Blender sequence editor, video sequence editor, no longer has a limit of 32 channels. You can go all the way to 128. Okay, it's not unlimited yet. This is a band-aid to expand and make it more useful for actual productions. But this limit was there since 2002. Imagine, almost 20 years with a limit of 32 channels. Not anymore. Now it's 128, and the goal in the future is to just keep it shorter, the amount of channels, unless you use them, and go unlimited as long as your computer can handle it. So yay for that. Let's open the video sequence editor. And there you go. So if we go here, you can go more, 32. And let's even, wait, why can I add a color? Color. Now I'm confused. Clip, sound, color. Ah, there you go. I didn't see it. There you go. Let's take, this is the first time I'm gonna move a strip over 32. Doesn't let me. Is that, oh shoot. I downloaded the buildbot, which was compiled yesterday, and yesterday is just too old because this change was done by Dalai during lunch, like a few before lunch. And that was the most underwhelming, and I couldn't compile the I don't know, I got some error here that oh, that's a bummer. Okay, well, never mind then. And compiling from the buildbot, kicking the buildbot is gonna take like 40 minutes. So that is very underwhelming, you know? I have Blender compile at the studio. So yes, 128. No, I'm not gonna skip the VGE because this setting, the change for 32 to 128, if you download the Blender experimental builds from buildbot, you are not gonna have this change either because it was added a few hours ago. You're gonna get it tomorrow. So let me show you something that you are going to get, hopefully. Fingers crossed. All right, let me drop something here. Let's drop a video in the video sequencer. Primero, first I'm gonna switch sides, and then let's see. So I have here pre-production.mp4. I have some audio, and there's a setting up here. I need a flip that I'm on the top. There is a new option as an overlay that you turn it on, and what is that? These are correct thumbnails on your strips. Let me go a bit higher. Let's go full screen. Let's cut an area. Let's press the S for seeking. What? Oh my gosh. Isn't that... Well, I don't know if you noticed, but also it's funny to see. This is the making of Elephant Stream. Actually, here you can see some history in the making. So I'm using the oldest open movie making of to show you the most recent features. So this video sequence editor, the strips, the thumbnail strips, they were just added last week. There will be improvements in terms of speed. There's a lot of room for improvement, but in this current state, it's just already amazing. Like, you can actually see what's going on. It's just yeah. I mean, again, if you use any editing software in the past, this must be super underwhelming. But think of all the lonely hearts that been spending hours in the video sequence editor. Now you can use this. It's so cool. So yeah, this is a part of a Google Summer of Code project. It was made by a student, improved by people from the module, with feedback from people in the module. But Aditya Jepu Quantimani did it, and even explains how it works. It works for movies and image strips. To draw the thumbnails, this overlay has to be enabled, and strips must be tall enough. Yes, if you don't have enough room, it just doesn't make sense to have such tiny strips, so they're gonna disappear after a while. But if you have it big enough, it's gonna fit. There's also now a limit to how big the strips can be. As you can see, it's gonna be 4 channels. So if you have there, it's gonna be almost 4 channels tall. Actually, with the here with the time markers, it's gonna fit. But you see, it fits 4 channels, which it was discussed in the team just to see, okay, this is maybe a good average of having 4. Of course, you can go down and have fit in more tracks, but I think that's a good workable stage size. Let's add more. I'm gonna add more. I'm gonna break my Blender. Let's see. Oh wow, that was super fast. I just loaded a 478 megabyte of another making of. Look at Don, so young. And Bassam, Andy, Lee. Okay, let's continue, because this is not only what. Let's go through a bit more of the under the hood stuff. So the cache capacity is limited to 5,000 thumbnails and performs a cleanup of non-visible images when the limit is reached. So once you fill in that 5,000, you're gonna notice that when it needs more, or make new thumbnails, is gonna delete the previous one. So you're gonna see some jumping around, and there is a lot of work done to be done to improve that, to make it less jumpy as possible. But having this is already huge. The thumbnails are loaded from the source file, not from the cache, and they're using separate threads and stored in cache, but they're not from a proxy. So maybe that can be improved in the future as well. Actually, I can see Blender is still building proxies here automatically. So it's actually pretty fast to be still building the proxies of this video, and awesome. So yay, super neat. Oh, Matt Ev, he used to be a developer, Blender developer too, UI developer. Okay, I have something really cool to show you here as well. You may not have noticed, but do you see this outline around this video? Well, you can click on this. You can press G to move it, R to rotate it, and S to scale it. What? Yes, you can. You have pivot point. You have you can even change in transform settings. You can change the origin like a 3D object, and it is just amazing. So if I want the origin there, now I rotate it and it just works just like you would expect it to work. So let's say, okay, I'm gonna have this alpha over so I can actually see both. And let's see this one. Oh, okay, I broke. Okay, so I want this one here and then this one here. Nice. That is probably the most requested feature after the thumbnails for the video sequence editor. This is just insane. I know, really basic features, but come on, we've been waiting for this for so long. Transform Tools by Richard Antalik. Add tools for image manipulation in sequencer preview region. This includes translate, rotate, and resize operators, tools, and gizmos. Yeah, if you have the tool, you can click here and you have the gizmos. You can use the gizmos like it was 1998. I much prefer to just use the shortcuts. Yeah, isn't it great? So I think it doesn't change the arrows yet. That is planned, but it's not changing it yet. And scaling. Isn't it great? Blender Video Sequencer is finally getting some love. So much awaited. That tunchi. So cool. Okay, let's read a bit more of the commits. Origin for image transformation, median point and individual origin pivot modes. Select and box select operator works in the preview. You can do box select with Shift B. I never knew that Shift B worked the zoom. Okay, I don't think it is new, but okay. Border select. Where is the border select? Here. Select box. There you go. Although this should be B, right? The same shortcut as in. I think there are some things to tweak with the shortcuts. The the twin. Sorry. Thanks, Rizlo. I think there are some things to tweak. For example, you can select with Shift, with click, and with regular click. If you have the select tweak, you can't. Or yeah, you see, if I want to select what here, this object, I can't. And I think it has to do with left click, right click, select. But it's just a matter of tweaking this thing. I mean, this remember, this week on Wednesday is the Beacon 2. We finally moved into Beacon 2. It was supposed to be last week, but it's actually this week. That means that there is 2 more days to keep adding things to Blender, like new stuff to Blender. But after Wednesday, it's only going to be fixes. So once this is added in Blender 3.0, that's weird. Because this is added, now all the fixes to make this better are gonna happen in the main branch. So don't get too sad if things don't work as expected yet. Image overlay drawing, and yeah, isn't that great? Isn't this super great? Pivot point was added. I just mentioned that. It was the setting was missing, and also the zoom to fit option was only exposed in preview, but now it's it works on all display modes. There's no in image mode, but now it works everywhere because there's really no reason why not should work. So this was added by Peter. Thank you, Peter. And that's it for the video sequence editor. Wasn't that great? Is it keyable? What is keyable? Yes, everything is keyable here. It's I mean, if you just move things around and just key the position, you can just move around. So this is called position. We call it, yeah, I guess it's okay, but because we call it location in other places, but I guess it makes sense. And then in the geometry nodes, it's sometimes called translation. I think we need to pick one and just stay with that. So yeah, you can animate everything. You can go crazy. Okay, enough video sequence editor. This is just super cool, super welcome. To summarize, 128 channels, strip thumbnails, video sequence editor, image transform tools in the preview, and expose zoom to fit in all modes. That is amazing. I have a list of changes in the geometry notes, but I'm not gonna cover that because I'm gonna save it for the next week when I have Dalai Felinto, who's been working very closely, well, as part of the geometry nodes team, but also very closely with other modules. So with all the modules pretty much. So it will be awesome to have him as a guest. And there is no more in the Netherlands. You don't have to stay more than 1.5 meters if you don't want to anymore. So that means we can actually be on the same room. Okay, let's continue. Even without all the geometry nodes updates this week, there's still lots to see. Such as, we don't talk often about modeling. Improvements, oh wait, modeling. We don't talk enough about modeling. There is not usually many new features happening in that sector. But one of the Google Summer of Code projects this year was around the knife tool, improving so many things in the knife tool, like adding functionality that it's present in other tools, but it wasn't in the knife tool, such as, let's see, knife tool setting to control the snapping angle increment. Yes. Then you can constrain the angle, the angle to different angles of your knife. Support for entering snapping angle via increment via the number key. So like any other tool like this, you would imagine this was already there, but it wasn't actually. It was a bit not abandoned, but it was half some settings that are usually in other places in Blender, they weren't here. Press A twice to enter relative constraint angle. This is I don't know if it should be A twice, because that is for select and deselect. Press R to cycle between edges to snap relative. Okay, maybe some of the shortcuts have to be reimagined. Add a knife tool setting for constraint angle default mode. Options are none, screen, or relative. Oh, you can have screen space even. Snapping, this one is one of my favorites. So you can press X, Y, Z while you're snapping. And let me show you here in a real demo. So I have this fantastic cube, and I can use a knife, and I can press, well, let's do it here. So I have a knife, and I can press Z to constrain it to Z, Y, and X. So Z in this case, maybe I can just do it here. Y, for example, I'm cutting from inside, or X, or Z. So, bam, enter. It's cut. Oh, I didn't cut through because I need to press C, right? This feature has been there before. The C and then enter. Bam, cut through. What else? Press the same key again, will snap to local axis. So it will toggle between local and global the same way it does in modeling, in regular modeling tools. Respects the scene orientation setting if it's set, and allows for custom orientations. That's pretty neat. So these custom orientations, really, that's amazing. So here, if I use cut, and then it's actually using this angle. That's super cool. Next, visible distance and angle measurements. Yes, press S key while you are cutting, and it will show you the distance that is going to cut that between the cuts. So 2.38 meters. Also, there is like a little Bible of options down here when you have the knife tool. I think we have to refactor this in a way. I mean, from a UI point of view, this is a bit of a mess. Like, it has a mix of ASCII symbols some regular text, DBL LMB for double left mouse button. We have icons for those, so maybe this will change by the time of the 3.0 comes out. But there's a lot of super useful info there, like to make new cuts for snapping, although it doesn't even fit in a 16:9 Full HD screen, so that needs some work. Maybe when the text becomes icons, it's gonna use less space. What else? It shows pressing S repeatedly will cycle between 3 modes: only distance, only angles, or both. Ah, that's cool. So if I do S once, I see the distance. S again, I will see the angle. Nice. Maybe it could show up not behind the cursor. Maybe this should be on a bit to the side. But again, super handy. And both. So you can have both. That's super cool. Nice. Next, shows angle between the current cut segment and the previous cut segment on mesh edge. And this actually brings me, so if you have one cut edge and then another cut edge, and you have the previous cut, the current cut, or existing corners. That's super cool. Nice. And let's see if yes. 2021 has arrived. The future is here. You can now, please sit down. You can now undo. Ctrl Z to undo your knife changes one by one. That's amazing. Previously, if you're not familiar with the tool, there was no undo. So if you already had like a very nice cut and you undo, you would the entire cut will be you have to redo everything again. Now you can go step by step back into the cut that you had before. Yay, like a modern software, almost. That's amazing. Starting point for current cut segment is adjusted accordingly. If the cut is drag cut, the entire drag cut is undone. Super, super cool. Thank you, Cyan Jinx. You are awesome. Not only that, there is X-ray mode. Press V to toggle depth checking for cut segment drawing code. So let's see again. So let's do a cut over here and then press V. And as you can see, you can, the points are showing through the mesh. So what is behind as well. And if you do C for cutting through, I'm pressing now V. As you can see, it shows the points or not of the mesh behind. So cool. And multi-object edit mode. So if you have multiple objects, wait, if I have multiple cubes here and I am in edit mode of all of them, can I cut through? Oh, that's amazing. Okay, that's amazing. That's super cool. Wow, they are still separate objects, people, but I'm cutting through all of them. That is so cool. Nice. Wow. It's crazy, like all of the changes, well, all of the settings and options that the knife tool didn't have, that I think I'm not surprised about the new features, but the features that it didn't have before. So thank you, Cyan Jinx, for bringing this into, and thank you, Howard Tricky, for reviewing this. It's just awesome. Really, really a big change and improvement for the video knife tool sequence editor. Okay, let's continue. The list still goes on. Well, there is also a setting to change the XYZ in the keymap for the knife. I don't know why you would want XYZ to be something else, maybe like numbers, but you can. It's a setting. Okay, we still have a lot to cover. Let's switch quickly. Some performance improvements in the video. something with the video. I keep thinking about the video sequence editor. The file browser or the asset browser now are much faster when browsing libraries. How much faster? Well, depends on how many libraries you have, but let's see. File browser, Jeroen mentions, reduce overhead browsing libraries. When browsing the libraries, all the assets were opened multiple times. Yep. Once to determine the needed groups to query, and once for each group to query the items in the group. So there was a lot of overhead. For file browsing, this makes sense, but for asset browsing, this can be reduced. So yeah, if you're browsing the file, it makes sense. But like, for example, when you append or link, but for asset browsing, didn't really make a lot of sense. So how much faster it is? Let's go to the numbers. Well, let's see it here. Let's see it here because I saw this video and it was impressive. So okay, now refresh. Let's go. Now refresh. And second, and int, and you got it. It's super slow. And now refresh again in the patch and done. Many times faster, magnitudes faster. Let's see here the numbers. So in master it was 7.57 seconds, and in the patch was less than a second, 0.8, loading the asset library. Yeah, the asset libraries. So that's awesome. This file is from, I think it's from the Spring Open Movie project, or yes, I think it was from Spring. So it's a production file with hundreds of objects. So yeah, for performance. I know some people have been concerned about the speed of the asset browser when it was just added, but again, this was alpha. It's still alpha software, so things gonna get faster. Don't get too sad, depressed about things not being fast the moment they're in. It's pretty normal. Like, you don't see that in commercial software because you don't see alpha versions of commercial software. So you don't know how slow things were the moment that change was added. You see when the product is final, or maybe if you're in some beta testing, but you don't see the alpha. So give it some time. Blender is so transparent that sometimes the transparency plays against it. That's the nature of open source. Let's continue. There's even more changes. So the catalog listing of the asset browser now is gonna load immediately before even the assets themselves. So it will make it feel more snappy. You don't have to wait for the entire library to load. You can load first the catalogs and then each asset individually. Next change. Thank you, Julian, for that. Grease Pencil. Let's talk a little bit about Grease Pencil. And I just refreshed my list of changes here. Okay, wow, changes to the length modifier. There is a modifier that was added some time ago that is called length. So say you have a strip that goes this long. Well, with a modifier, you can make it extrapolate basically and keep going on forever. You can extend the length of your stroke. The extent of the length of the stroke was linear basically in the past. Now there's an option for curvature, so you can have extended strokes but in the shape of a curve. Why would you use that? Well, when you want to make cool things like this. Yep. So here, for example, the lines are, I think they are very like short, and then the extension and the curve extension is what makes it look like this. In the here in the commit, it says extend the stroke following an approximated circular helical curve. This can be used as an effect for line art or in its own as a helix generator. The UI looks like this: curvature, point density, smoothness, filter angle, and invert. You can invert. Crazy. So that's awesome. With a small stroke, you can continue the rest of the curve. Nice. So cool. And the demo is awesome. I don't know who made the demo. This is an example of what can be done with a helix generator using the default cube. That is a default cube, ladies and gentlemen. The next improvement. So thank you, Henrik, for working on this. And thank you to all the developers that reviewed it. This one by Yiming Wu, it's a setting for chaining line art. You know, you can chain line art modifiers. You can, but sometimes when you change one line art to the other, the interpolation would be very smooth. It will follow the shape of your geometry, and it would be a bit jagged, depending on how dense your geometry is. Not anymore. You can now tweak the smooth value in the chaining subpanel to make it go smooth. Super cool. Thank you, Yiming, for working on this. The next change, this is mainly a change to an existing modifiers. They were added maybe a few weeks ago, I think. It's the weight modifier, the proximity weight, vertex group proximity weight modifiers in Grease Pencil, which are pretty similar to what you can find in mesh objects, but they were like two modifiers combined into one. Now, for Grease Pencil, where in meshes there are two modifiers, and in order to keep things more consistent, these are now split, so they follow more closely what you will find in meshes to keep things more familiar. Also, there is a new column in the list of Grease Pencil modifiers. It's the new modify column, just like in meshes. So all these changes are for consistency. So when you have a Grease Pencil object, the list of modifiers now looks more closely to what you will find in meshes. Yay for consistency. That is all for the Grease Pencil section. Let's move into, let's see, how many sections do I have? Animation, rigging, add-ons, libraries, and user interface. You see, if I would have like talked about all the geometry node stuff, it would have been so long. Deep breath. Keymap. Wait, I'm gonna sneeze. False alarm. Keymap changes. There are new user preferences for your keymaps. The user preferences keymap, if you're using right-click select, especially the changes that happen in 2.8, when the left-click select and right-click select were changed, were swapped, they and in the introduction of tools, the toolbar and the tool system, they were some workflows that didn't work really well, especially if you're using a pen. That was also very problematic. Usually right-click select works much better in general for mouse and also for the pen, but yeah, it wasn't very ideal. There are a few changes that were made this week to the settings, to the user preferences, where you can tweak your keymap in a more easy way. You don't have to go and change the keymaps themselves, like each key by key, but there are checkboxes now. For example, in the preferences, you're now going to find under keymap a tool keys. So in Blender currently, if you are here, for example, you have your mesh and you want to move it, you press G and you move it. You enter in this model key where you press enter. Click. R to rotate, S to scale. That's pretty neat. However, there's people that like to use tools for that. In other softwares, more from what I heard, there is, you can, when you press the key, you actually changing the model. You're not entering a model tool, you are changing the active tool, and then you perform your change, which to me is a bit slower, but there now you can do it in Blender, and there is a way to make it faster. So here in tool keys, in the keymap section, you can change it from immediate, which is the default, to active tool. So now if you see, now when I press G, you're gonna see the tool activated, but I'm not moving yet. R, rotate, S to scale. If you come from other software, you're gonna feel more familiar with this. To me, it's slower because you have to click twice, but there is a change for that. So there is another setting that is called Alt Tool Access, which I think it works more. I think if you use it in combination with this toggle here, like GRS, it's gonna be more useful, I think. Why? Because Alt Tool Access means that when you hold Alt and drag, you're gonna perform that, you're gonna use the tool basically. So if you are here, for example, if I press G to move in this new system, I got the grab tool, and then I do Alt and move, and I'm basically doing the same if I just press G. So it's 2 steps, but if you think about it, it's also 2 steps when you use the immediate mode, because you enter G, click, G, click. There's 2 clicks, and here there is R, click and drag, R, click and drag, G, click and drag. I'm not a huge fan of this change. It's a setting, that's why it's good to see it as a setting. I know many people, if you use a pen, maybe you get more used to it. But yeah, for example, one that it's very common is the bevel tool. So you do Control B and you don't start beveling right away. It's just enabled, and then you do Alt and click, drag, and you basically tweak that. So yeah, it's there for all your industry standardness. It's not on by default, so don't panic if you're used to the previous mode. It's good to see different workflows though. There's also a change that if you have these settings enabled, they are going to conflict. Well, it's not a new change, but they conflict by nature because they use Alt key with the emulate 3 button mouse. That's the one thing that you gotta keep in mind. If you use that setting, it's gonna conflict. Let's see what else. So I think I already covered this. So let's see the commit, just so you know. All the links, not all the links, but most links are in the description. I need to update the description because I had all the geometry node stuff, which I'm not gonna talk about. But yeah, preference keys to set the active tools. That's one of the changes. Then the other one that I mentioned is the preference for Alt left mouse button to use the active tool. The cool thing about that change is that you can click anywhere on the viewport, so you don't have to be here. You can do it anywhere. But I mean, the same with the immediate mode. The other change, it's a fallback for right mouse button select, right click select. It's a fallback tool. It's a preference for the fallback tool once you use right click select. So here, once you change to right click select, you're gonna have a right mouse select action, which is the selection tool, or the select and tweak, depends if you want to use a tool for selection or you just want to click and drag for tweaking. You also have alt cursor access, and there is another change that is in the right click select. Now there's an option where you can place the 3D cursor with alt left mouse button, in case you are used to that. So in right click select, if you click, you are basically setting the 3D cursor all the time, and that's one of the roots of people getting annoyed by right click select in 2.7 and before, is that something as basic as left click would put this weird red and white thingy that people not familiar with, and yeah, it makes you hate it basically. Although it's pretty handy, right? It's a pivot point in the world, but it gets on the way. So there is now a setting where you can set it with Alt L, left click select in the right click select keymap. Okay, enough with keymaps. There is a few changes in the user interface. There are not too many. One of them is I would consider it a fix that improves the legibility of the tooltips when you are drag and dropping something, or when you want to pick sample a color or sample the distance of the camera. Blender was using a hard-coded color that was not very readable. So now this change makes it use in the tooltip theme settings. So it works on pretty much every case, because I think every theme wants to have their tooltips readable. So it should not need any updates for your own themes. But just keep in mind that it's going to look different. It's not going to look like this anymore. It's going to look like this. Another change, really small, in the file browser, in the list of sources, the favorites panel is now called bookmarks, because Blender everywhere else was calling it bookmarks. I don't know why it was just that panel that was left, but all the operators are called bookmarks, and it just made sense. Also, the custom properties edit panel has been rewritten. Much better user experience. You don't have to type an array format thingy just to get an array. Now you can actually select it from the list. This is huge. I think I talked about this in the show a few times before, and yeah, or like making fun of it, or how weird it was. Now you can just choose the type. You don't have to. Before, you will have to type like brackets 0, 0, 0, like you have to type an array in order to get an array. Not anymore. That's super neat. I don't know how is it for colors though. Would that work? String Python, because here's a subtype. There you go, linear color. That's so cool. And if I do default one, this will be red. I didn't choose the right. There you go. Here. There you go. You can choose colors now. You can change even the subtype. Quaternion rotation. So yeah, this also was around for so long. These changes, they were so obscure, the way you would edit custom properties, that I'm super happy. And I didn't even know that Hans was working on it. So thank you, Hans, for making this change into 3.0. It's gonna make people's life, drivers' life, riggers, add-on creators, everybody much happier. Okay, this is a shout out to a first commit by Chandrapal Singh, because he noticed that, or they noticed that the batch operator didn't have a description. It was just having the tooltip was either no tooltip, or it would say like undocumented operator. So they went ahead and added this little description. So thank you and congrats for having a piece of your code in Blender forever. And last but not least, this is just something nice to share, is that there is a new, this is under the hood. This is not for the end users yet, but there is a new tree view API. So what is a tree view? Well, the outliner, the channels in the animation editors, or the spreadsheet also now has this new view, the asset browser as well. So there is this tree kind of looking view that can be used in multiple places in Blender, and it was basically rewritten every time, reinventing the wheel every time this was needed. So it's cool to see that there is an API, and it's not exposed to Python yet, but it could be in the future for add-ons to use their own. Okay, quickly, let's change libraries. There is a Wow, this is big. Proxies are being deprecated. Yeah, the future is library overrides. So there is now a utility to convert all the proxies to overrides. That means that Blender can now convert them all for you. And the moment you open Blender, it's gonna convert those proxies into library overrides. And there is no more make proxy operator. It's gone. And if I copy the right patch, bam, it's gone. Farewell, library overrides. No, sorry, proxies. Hello, library override. That's a big change, but I mean, it was long overdue. People were I think the developers has been testing and the users have been testing library overrides since they came out in 2.81, I think, the early 2.8 series. So it's been a while, and proxies really are, yeah, they're just old and they don't work as well. They're not super flexible. They're very limited. You can only do like characters or like groups only. They don't work for anything else, where library overrides are now working for much more areas. So yeah. Are you okay, Pablo? I am okay. Do I sound do I sound well? I am okay. I just overwhelmed by the amount of things that I still have to talk about, such as animation. Again, let's switch into the animation mode. There, remember the pose slide operator, the one that lets you, for example, the breakdowner tool that lets you choose a like a value between two poses. Well, there's a new operator that uses a similar concept but slightly different. This one, it's the blend to neighbor. Blend to neighbor. So, problem. When animating, you often want to nudge your current pose to the neighboring poses slightly. The breakdowner will override the current pose completely. So that's the problem. Here comes the blend to neighbor. So that's the difference. Where the breakdowner will end up here, the blend to neighbor will end up here. So this is 50%. Yay for animation. Today we have animation updates, we have modeling updates, and now there is rigging update. So thanks, Christoph, for working on that. Chris. Sounds a bit weird when I say full names. It's not very, it's like a mom, you know, like saying your full name when they get mad at you. Okay. Rigging. Yes, there is, well, rigging / weight painting in general. So maybe you're not rigging, maybe you're just doing geometry nodes, magic, but you will probably use at some point the gradient tool for weight paint. And the fall off setting wasn't exposed. It was hard-coded internally. Now it is exposed and now has similar settings as in the other fall off types, like constant, linear, custom with a curve. And I think I saw on Twitter a nice example. Let me see if I can find it here. Noel Belic has made one. I saw it some time ago. There you go, here. Exposing the UI for the weight paint tool gradient. So basically when you paint, now you can change the fall off. Smoother, sharp, root, sphere, the ones you already know, but now they're available in the tool itself. So super cool. Or constant, as you see there. And this one, yeah, this is another change that was actually added a time ago, but in case you didn't know, you can, as you're painting the gradient, you can hold space to move that gradient around. It's a little bonus tip by Noel Belic. So more updates. Okay, Well, actually, it's just changing in... Oh no, Rigify. Yes, speaking of rigging, I was in the rigging section. Look at this. Rigify. Support generating mirrored linked duplicate widgets. You know, sometimes you need a widget for your rig that is on the left and the right side the same, just mirrored, for like feet or arms or pretty much every model that is symmetrical. Well, now it can reuse the pre-existing widgets and mirror it. So less work for you, smarter, and yeah, faster, I would say, in a way. Faster to set up. Okay, there is one change in the add-ons I like to mention, but it's more like a potpourri section because the add-ons, the auto tile size, it's no longer needed now that Cycles X can automatically choose the right size for the tiles. You don't need it anymore, so it is gone. In case you depended on this add-on or you see an error when you open Blender, you don't see that add-on. It's gone. It's gone. Farewell. Okay, in the potpourri section, besides the add-on, there is also this is more like a fix to an existing tool, the viewport roll, the one that allows you to rotate the viewport. The internal roll in Blender wasn't great, and the Grease Pencil team with their add-on that is called Grease Pencil Tools that extends the Grease Pencil options. One of the features they added was a viewport roll. That was a 2D viewport roll, which was basically a fix for the roll that Blender already has. So based on that and on a patch, this has been fixed. And now Blender has a good viewport roll, which was very much welcome. Very welcome. You can also cancel. Before, you couldn't stop. Once you enter the roll, you couldn't cancel. It was just stuck there. So also pretty welcome. And that it's all, I think. There is one thing that is cool to mention for add-on developers maybe, or for developers in general, is that Blender now includes the JSON library, the popular JSON library. So this library has been mentioned in the past because it was needed for XR, for example, for loading some controller settings, the asset browser for listing, saving, and reading in JSON file, or Grease Pencil as well. So pretty much anything can be JSON. Like even settings, user pref could be stored there. The theme settings could be stored in there, right? Will be better than the XML. That is all for this week. How long? Oh, 1 hour 10. I don't have time for questions. Let's do 5 questions, or no, maybe more. Let's do a bit more, if I can reply them. Okay, refresh the page for the last time. 26 comments. Sorry. Okay, let's see. Maybe next week with Dalai I can answer more, because it's mainly going to be, there's not going to be as many changes as this week for sure. That's for sure. Now is when the developer is looking at this, is like, yeah, right, that's what you think. There's 2 more days of possible features to make it into Blender 3. Let's see. Do you know, asks Blender Bob, do you know if there is a plan to implement MIP mapping in both the renderers and the viewport? If you don't, can you ask developers and come back to us next week's? Please. I will, because I haven't actually I haven't seen this. I think it was mentioned to implement some kind of MIP mapping, like it had, like the Blender render branch had in the past, like automatically making smaller versions of the textures. But I don't know if that's even in the roadmap for the time being. I can ask. Hello, handsome Pablo. Hey, really? With this face, I'm after talking 1 hour out of breath. I want to just tell you that remesh modifier should have a minimum sliding limit. Whenever I slide it through mouse even a little bit, it jams. Also, come back to Linux. Yeah, if Linux will love me, or they would just pick one sound one sound library to use. Why would the user have to decide between ALSA and Pulse Audio or Pipewire, whatever? Why would the user have to think about that? They shouldn't. Developers, make our life easier. I agree with you that the remesh should have a more or like a warning, you know, when it's going too small, it should have a warning. A minimum slide. I don't know what is the minimum. I don't want to bork my stream right now by changing this, but let's see. I'm gonna turn it off and then go down. Wow, I can go to 0.0001. No. No, that's too much. What would be a good number? Tell me a good number and we can propose it, because Blender, you know, has two types of limits. One is the soft limit, which is for the UI, and one is the hard limit, which is the one you actually type. And you see, for example, here, the soft limit is 0 to 1. If I just move the mouse, it's 0 to 1. But if I enter the number, that is the hard limit. So maybe the soft limit could be much smaller. Well, how could you go into voxel size of 0.0001? It's too tiny. Thanks for the proposal. Hi Pablo, do you think there is a chance that the video sequence editor might become compatible with the compositor? Something like that will make my life so much easier. What do you mean by compatible? Sequence editor will compatible with the compositor. Making them, they work in different parts of the pipeline. They are, the compositor is what happens at the very... Yeah, no, there's just two different parts of the pipeline. You either will need to... I brought it up this once, and the description, the definition that I got from Ton, I think, it was that it wasn't very easy. It wasn't just a walk in the park to add because of the... Yeah, when you press F12, there's just go two different routes, and it would be a hack if it would be added, and that can be opening a can of worms. But maybe it's easier nowadays that we have better depth graph or more developers. Okay, Mayankind says, I hope you are doing great. I am, thank you. I just want to ask you about Blender texturing workflow. I believe it is better compared to other 3D software. Really? But not as good as standalone texturing software like Substance or Mary. Is there any time soon we can expect major improvements in it? Unfortunately, I don't know anyone that is working on that. People are making add-ons, but they are not contributing back to Blender, making Blender's texture and painting workflow better, unfortunately. But I think everybody agrees, all the developers agree that the texturing workflow, it's something that needs to be tackled as soon as possible. There are all the areas that have been tackled at the moment, and we just need a developer that, you know, lives and breathes texture painting, that really likes the system and painting and going and brush engines and layers. And so the topic is pretty big and it needs a team behind. That's it's not something like a developer can just go and lock themselves in a cave and work on that for a month and come back. It needs a team behind. So I have high hopes for the 3.x series of Blender to finally tackle texturing workflow. I think it's one of the biggest, like even before thinking of any kind of interaction or game engine, texture painting. Some of the major features I would like to see: new implementation of texture baking. Old one is pretty rough, I agree. New support texture baking for baking, yes. Layer-based texturing and multi-channel texturing, yes. Smart masks, yes. Yep, let's get people to work on this. Please. There must be developers out there who love this topic. Marcelago says, and now you probably, hey Pablo, now you probably already had countless questions when ACS is going to arrive, but mine has a twist, I promise. I recently tried to add the ACS profiles manually to Blender color profiles, and it worked as intended. However, there was one considerable issue with the UI. When you have a list as huge as the ACS profiles can be, the UI does not adjust the window to make selections further down the list selectable or even visible. It just extends beyond the screen, and mine is even 4K. Is there a way that the UI can be adjusted to switch to a scrollable list, like shader nodes search? When the window extends beyond a threshold, sounds like a good task for a beginner developer. But unfortunately, I, for now, can't do it myself as I'm still deep into the learning basics of Python. Hey, it's good that you are learning basics. There are actually, I mean, all menus have this little arrow that extends, and this works everywhere in Blender actually. Like when the menu doesn't fit, there is this. So I don't know exactly what you mean. If the menu doesn't get this automatically, that's super weird. That could be a bug even, because you should get it. Otherwise, it could just pop up a selector like the data block selector. Okay, well, almost an hour 20. Let's do 5 more questions. Blender Defender, hi Pablo, how are you doing? Great. Although I'm super late for the Spanish version of Blender.Today. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. I am late for Blender for the Spanish Blender.Today. If you're watching this and you're waiting for Blender.Today, sorry. Blender Defender says, I've got a question regarding the Python API. Do you think exposing the node socket positions as read-only to the Python API is a good idea? Node socket positions. Why the socket? It themselves. No, the sockets are attached to the node. Why would you expose that? Hola Pablo, incredible run of updates this week. The devs are on fire. Yes, no feature requests and no question. I just want to use this space to give more visibility to this game-changing patch. Hoping that the process of accepting it might go faster. 3.0 era is literally calling for this. What is this? Oh yeah, yep. I want this so much. This is one of yeah, if you're not familiar with this, it's just a shortcut that allows you to do my favorite feature of all Blender, of all the Linux window managers, which I even have an app called Alt Drag to do that for me here on Windows. And but it's an app, it's not native, and so when the app crashes, you don't have this anymore. So yeah, we need this so much. I tried replying, but then there were some discussions. Maybe we can bring this back to life. These changes look great. I have an idea. What was the last decisions made? The limbo status is frustrating. Sorry about that. I don't think it will be forgotten. No, it shouldn't be forgotten. I'm gonna have this open. Maybe, you know, sometimes it also needs people to be more enthusiastic about it, to, hey, I tested it, it goes great, I tested it with the latest master, or update the patch. But yeah, thanks for mentioning it though. Okay, let's do 2 more. Hola Pablo, hope you're doing a great day. I would like your opinion about something. When you open the preferences window, the window pops up where the cursor is. You can see the behavior better if you call the menu by pressing F4 and calling the preferences from there. But I think that would be better if the window could remember the last position where it was getting close. So when you open it again, it will pop where it was not under the cursor. Let's see. So if you open this, yeah, I don't know. Do you think? Because if I close it on this side of the screen and then I open it when I'm here, I want to be access immediately the settings, not just popping up here and then, otherwise it will be grabbing the window, which with Alt Drag or on Linux is super handy, but on Oh, what did I do? Oh no, I hit everything. I hope I didn't crash. Is the live stream still going? Yes, it is going. I did a gesture that I hit every window. Fantastic. Okay, cool. I closed everything. So here, Blender ANEW, the chat, and the settings. Shaking a Windows hides all. Terrible, terrible feature. Windows, please get rid of it. How do I bring it back though? Wiggle to minimize everything. Yeah, how do I bring it back? Windy. Windy? Windy. Okay. And the last question, Paulo was, yeah, but this didn't bring the Windows. Not really good with Windows. Managing Windows. If you ignore. It didn't break the second screen Windows yet. Okay, Pablo asks, please list me what extensions were used to make the Blender Spring movie. None. The team at the studio don't really use many add-ons at all. Besides the ones by the studio themselves, which you can find in the cloud. There is an article about it. About the, for example, the contact sheet add-on, and if you click on the repo, you can see the other add-ons that are used. If I flip to my evil side, there. Okay, I hear that you can disable the shaking, but you need to edit the register. That's what I can't grasp my mind around. Windows users complaining that Linux is hard, when on Windows, for something as simple as disabling the shaking, you have to go and edit the thingy. Last question, please take a look at my ideas for Blender and tell me how far they are from realization. It's better to just leave the questions here, I think, because the ideas, it's hard to like render with multiple render engines at the same time. This is done. Bulge geometry node. Python geometry node in Blender geometry nodes. Mask modifier for volume. How would you mask a volume? Yeah, though it's hard to go and pinpoint each one of the ideas one by one. So next time maybe just leave as part of the question the idea itself, and maybe we can talk about it. Okay, let's wrap it up. Can't even speak anymore. Good thing that next week I'm gonna have a guest. Dalai. I hope you are okay with this if you're watching, with being at the show next week for Geometry Nodes special. This week there was just too many things. Blender Video Sequence Editor, upgrade, cycles, X, which I couldn't even show, but it's just crazy fast. Go into YouTube. There is community has been covering it a lot. It's been also a few days since it was added, a week, so there must be also new videos on YouTube about it. Animation, modeling, the knife tool is finally upgraded to a more useful standard. Rigging changes, user interface, Keymap, library overrides. What else? What a full show we had this week. Is Clément Foucault still there? No, he actually was only for a week. He left already. But tomorrow we have a presentation by Jeroen Bakker about the developer of Eevee, Render, Compositor, many areas in Blender. And he's going to present to the team at the studio what they talked about last week. So I'm gonna make notes and talk about it here in next week's Blender Today. But for the time being, let's see each other next week. Same time, hopefully different place. I can't promise anymore. I will use some time this week to set up the audio properly. It's probably just me. Sorry for the rant today about audio and stuff. I really wanted to do it from the studio, but let's do it again next week. Same place, same time. Another episode of Blender Today live. I didn't warn you about the sound, sorry. Okay, see you. Have fun. Blend away.